Hello, my name is Brad Hunt. I had a phone call, so I wasn't able to get to it. So, anyway, I'm going to be reading from the book by Michael A. Hoffman called Secret Society and Psychological Warfare by Michael A. Hoffman II. And what I'm going to be reading is another snippet, basically about 2 pages long. It's entitled Angels of Light. So, here we go. Many of the Judo Christianities based upon Satan hunters and Satan fighters are part of the problem. Let's see, just a little bit closer here. It's not the solution. They have blind faith in the police, the military, and the government. They have no idea or concept of the fact that Freemasonry and Satanism are sometimes controlled and staffed by elements within the police and the government. They see the world through the eyes of the rulers of the system. They remind me of the very story of St. Augustine told of a pirate who is confronted by that mighty conqueror, Alexander the Great. How dare you molest the sea? Alexander angrily asked the pirate. How dare you molest the whole world? The pirate replied. Because I do it with only a little ship. I am called a thief. You doing it with a great navy are called the emperor. Interesting that perspective. It is true. That makes perfect sense. So let's continue on. Many Satan hunters and occult investigators repeatedly ignore or minimize the influence of Yale University Skull and Bones Society on issues such as George Bush and son George W. Bush, and of the whole Freemasonry has over some of the very policemen who lecture at schools about the occult. So they're playing a game here. Let's continue. Gullible investigators have been readily deceived by sensationalism, tall tales from publicity, hunger, that is, teenage psychotics. Nonsensical stories invented by schizophrenics are accepted as face value as satanic rites, without regard for rules of evidence. Sloppy methods and credulity only spread confusion and disbelief. Is someone deliberately muddying the trail? He asks. We need to take note of how little the churches and their various occult watchers are concerned themselves with the enemy defined or identified in Ephesians 6:12 as spiritual weaknesses. Spiritual wickedness in high places. Instead, the focus of many Satan investigators is on some third-rate Halloween trick or treater fronting a rock band. The deadliest occultist is seldom garbed in some trappings, but rather presents himself in the latest style and fashions of the wealthy, powerful, and respected elite. The original definition of Satan in the Bible is straightforward and non-occult. The word means adversary. Adversaries are all those false Christs and false prophets who order us to obey man's rules in the name of God's law, as did the Anglican divine right kings. So this is coming from a perspective of the Anglicans, which is the Church of England, or the Episcopalians. There are three different names. Who are the Satanists? What of these TV evangelists who wave the Bible while chanting, send money, send money, send money? They have caused millions of people to equate Christ with charlatans and to regard the Bible as little more than a book of self-serving alibis for greed and deceit. What could be more satanic? The majority of those who call themselves Christians are just as much Satanists as any other heavy metal rock band. In fact, the morality of the heavy metalists may be a bit higher since they admit what they are, whereas the so-called Judeo-Christians pose behind just the sort of pious hypocrisy front Jesus Christ has honorified. Millions of churchmen promote the worship of the doctrines of central government because their church receives tax-exempt status only so long as these preachers for hire advocate idolatry of the state. But Christ taught the opposite, based upon Matthew 20, verses 25 through 28. in Mark 10, verses 40 through 45. Most churches allow Christians to adore multi-million-dollar sports team players and franchises which hold gigantic football and baseball contests in huge Roman-style coliseums broadcast to hundreds of millions of people on television to the greatest glory of money, the waste of time, and the propagation of mass idolatry. According to Kim France, that is, a former majorette performing at halftime during football games held at the Houston Astrodome. Certain hypocrisms are tolerated, even encouraged. Cheerleaders are God-fearing girls or gals who bow their heads to recite the Lord's Prayer before games and are members of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. In their heyday, the Dallas Cowboys professional football team were known as the God Squad. Meanwhile, the cheerleaders dressed like low-rent Las Vegas showgirls. So he's talking about hypocrisy here. Because they were Baptists and dancing was prohibited, Suzanne Schwartz would not become a cowboy cheerleader until she discussed it with their family minister. He said, "Honey, you can dance all you like for the Dallas Cowboys. It's those other Cowboys we want you to stay away from." Wow, that's amazing, isn't it? Furthermore, pious Protestant fundamentalists assert that so-called Jews who deny Jesus Christ are somehow saved by their race, even though Christ said, "No man cometh unto the Father but by me." John 14:6. The Catholic Church also subscribes to this saved by race line. Dr. Eugene Fisher, Director of Catholic Jewish Relations for the National Conference of Catholic Bishops, stated, "The path of dialogue is first, the elimination from Christian teaching of all the vestiges of the ancient Christian polemics against Judaism." So this is basically watering down this. Now what I'm going to say, Michael Hoffman is a Catholic, so I want to make sure you know that, okay? So you understand his perspective, where he's coming from. So the notion that one can define Christianity as good by saying it's better than Judaism is a fundamental heresy. One needs to understand that God chose the Jewish people irrevocably and as Scripture says very clearly. This is a master race propaganda put forward by angels of light who claim to be horrified by the Nazis, but who today worship Jews as a race possessed of an irrevocably divine status. If that is the case, why did Jesus even bother to preach if the Jews of his time were already saved by their Herrenvolk, that's a German word, status? And if Scripture says this very clearly, why the vociferous calls of late for the censorship of certain problematic passages of the New Testament? Again, watering down in order just to get along. A lot of it simply is for show. That's my words. The document of Vatican Commission for Religious Relations with Judaism, Section 4 states, "We propose in the future to remove from the Gospel of St. John the term the Jews, where it is used in a negative sense, and to translate it, the enemies of Christ." At a speech at Hebrew University in Jerusalem, Chicago Catholic Angel of Light Joseph Cardinal Bernacchi stated, "There is need for theological reflection, especially with what many consider to be problematic New Testament texts. Retranslation and reinterpretation certainly need to be included among the goals we pursue in the effort as the eradicating anti-Semitism." The Gospel of John is generally considered among the most problematic of all New Testament books in its outlook towards Jews and Judaism. This teaching of John about the Jews, which resulted from the historical conflict between the church and synagogues in the latter part of the first century, can no longer be taught as authentic doctrine or used as catechism by the contemporary Christianity. Christians today must see that such teaching can no longer be the airwaves and into the news racks. One, the ritual murders are successfully accomplished. The principal getaway, the scapegoat conveniently takes the blame. 2, later we learn the truth, but no one is persecuted, or prosecuted, I should say. We are mocked, disoriented, and demoralized. occult prestige and potency is heightened. Now, when he's speaking of occult here, he's speaking a perspective that I don't agree with. What the meaning simply is, the occult is a mystery. So when he says this, he's bringing in his own perspective here of his baggage. So we need to understand that, because he's looking at it on a particular. He's not looking at it as an omni viewpoint. He's looking at it as a completely different perspective. So we must understand that and what he's saying, so we don't get that confused. Okay. This is what simplistically researchers miss: the function of a macabre arrogance, thumbing its nose at us while we do nothing except spread the tale of their immunity and invincibility further. That is the game plan operative here. To the belief system of the modern man, it sounds too crazy. Why would the perpetrators want their secrets revealed after the fact, even if it was years later? This question can only be definitely answered if one has a understanding of the zeitgeist, which overseas in the cryptocracy have partly manufactured and partly tailored their own operations to coincide with. As I pointed out, secrets like this were rarely revealed in the past because traditional people had not yet been completed the alchemy processing to make such things perverse modern revelations to a unprocessed, healthy, and vigorous population that possessed a will, memory, adherence to the deepest inner intuition, and intense interest in their own salvation would not have been a good thing for the hypocrisy. It would have proved fatal to them. But to reveal these things after the act, secrets in our modern time, to people who have no memory, no willpower, and no interest in their own fate, except insofar as it may serve as a momentary titillation, that's spelled Titillation. Entertainment actually strengthens the enslavement of such a people. So that's my reading from page 76, 77, and 78 from this particular book tonight from Michael A. Hoffman II. So if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to ask. If not, I understand. So I wish you a good night. And again, like I'm saying, simply he's looking at it in a different perspective than maybe I am as the occult. The occult is basically what he's saying is basically Satan worship is what he's looking at. Okay. Thank you for your kind attention, and you have a good night. You take care.